It is very clear from the last two panel discussions that a lot of discussion about short form videos, conversation about ample of content that is available, and it is making difficult for publishers to monetize their content. And the traditional models are being tested. And with all these challenges, I think there are a lot of opportunities which lies. Opportunities to innovate, opportunity to think, can we do something different? Can we open up a new channel which can help us in monetization and driving our traffic, or new content formats, or basically talking about a different model which can boost our revenue? Because we say that content is free, but it's been sponsored by someone. And someone says that there is no free lunches, you need to pay for each and every content. Either it's paid by advertiser, or it is being sponsored by yourself, you are subscribing to it. So with this discussion, what we're gonna do is we're gonna divide this session into three topics, which is largely on the trends, challenges, and lastly, on the opportunities that we see. So starting off with this thing, we will like to have a discussion with, starting with Sanjay, with you. Given the increased trends of subscription model, and this is quite trendy. Most of the publishers wants to open up a subscription model so that they can monetize their content, and this can be an additional source of revenue as compared to what was their traditional models. And since you have already implemented it, so if you can share some insights of how is this going and whether it's successful for you and what else can be done.
So I think subscription is, for anybody who's serious in the content business, it's inevitable. So unless you're in the entertainment business, it's different. But in the news business, I don't think, unless you get to a subscription kind of a model, your model will be sustainable. Now, it's not that you switch on subscriptions and you'll start making tons of money tomorrow. There's an entire process involved, and it's a long-term journey. To make it a viable alternative or an add-on to your advertising business, it will take anywhere between 5 to 10 years to reach a scale where it will make a significant difference to your bottom line. And when I say significant difference to your bottom line, essentially, a lot of your premium content comes from your print newsroom. So the bottom line has to be enough to be able to sustain the print newsroom when print is not able to sustain it. Today, print is able to sustain it and subsidize the digital business. But tomorrow, there will be a time, and we've seen it in the West, that the print newsrooms become unsustainable on their own, and digital has to start chipping in. So that scale will take 5 to 10 years to achieve. But the good thing is, you have that runway in front of you, right? Print is still growing in this country. It is profitable. It is contributing to the bottom line. So they're able to sustain their newsroom costs and give you that comfort and that runway to build that model. So it's not a short-term game. That's one. Two, there are two components to the subscription game. One is acquisition, and second is retention. Now, retention is like you have a bucket which you are trying to fill with water, but it has a hole. So if you are not able to retain your subscribers, then you may have a tap which is 10 mm or 20 mm or 50 mm, the bucket will never fill. So more than acquisition, I think you have to work on your retention strategy.
Then how do you differentiate? Because if you see there is a lot of content which is available, how you will say that why you should be paying for my content?
Yeah, so I think that comes to good journalism. So what you have to ask, and somebody just asked in the previous section, does news have to be entertaining? Well, if people are willing to pay for it, yes. If people want serious content, so every brand has historically built a niche for itself, right? And you have to figure out what is your niche. And most legacy publishers, whether print or TV, have a brand positioning. And that is what builds their audiences and affinity of their readers or viewers to their content. So you have to figure out what is the niche you want to cater out. What is the value that your content will add to your niche? And I'll give you 3 examples. I have done 3 subscription businesses so far in my life. The first one I did in 2005-06 when I was in TV 18. And there we were doing a product called Power Your Trade, which was targeted at the trading community, where we were giving stock market recommendations. So the value proposition was very clear. You subscribe to this product and we'll give you stock market recommendations which will help you make money. The second product I did was ET Prime, where we were targeting the corporate business user, and we were saying we'll give you insightful stories which will add value to your professional business life. Now, Indian Express was pretty challenging because we are now talking about general news space. And here, again, I was initially very skeptical because I was not a very Indian Express reader. I was more of a Times guy for almost 25 years. So I was very skeptical, and also that was an exciting challenge for me. How do I make general news readers pay for content? Because the business and the market propositions are very easy to articulate and understand. And I think the quality of content in today, and today it's actually much easy because there's so much noise and so much bias and so much, echo chambers floating out there, that if somebody can create content which cuts across these issues and present it to the reader, he's willing to pay. And that is what our experience has been. And then as you move along, you find niches that resonate with your audiences, or audiences that resonate with certain kind of content, and then you start investing in growing those. So we started with opinion, we moved to explain, and that is what is working with our audiences. I'm not saying everybody should do that, because every brand has its own strength, and you have to play on your strength, what value you bring to the table. So we found our strengths, we found our niches, and we are working on growing them. And then we are trying to find new segments on which we kind of grow our acquisition strategy. But more important than that, and I'll keep coming back to this, is about retention, which leads to engagement. So both acquisition and retention are a function of engagement. So unless you are working on engaging your users, and engagement again is measured on multiple parameters. Pages per session, time spent is one way of measuring engagement, but that doesn't convert. The engagement metrics that convert for a subscription business is loyalty. How often do your readers come to you, right? Because if they're coming to you often, then you have an opportunity to show them right content, understand their needs, personalize, and then put a paywall to block their access to content that they have started cherishing and enjoying. And that is when they start paying. So whether it is an acquisition or whether it is a retention, if you don't have engagement, it will not work.
But is it also to do with doing away with those ad revenue which can come from, say, direct advertisers who are ready to pay for this premium audiences? How do you differentiate between these two?
So there's a call. Again, I'll not say there's one size fits all. Everybody has to take their own call. Our conscious call, and my personal belief has been, you have to have both models working hand in hand. So while subscription, India is at the end of the day still a very price sensitive market. So I cannot run my newspaper at a price at which I charge for the newspaper, which is something like 2,500 rupees. I can't sell a digital subscription at that price. I sell between 1,000 to 1,500 rupees. So I still need the ad support to keep the revenue coming in. And eventually what will happen is, once you have a large base of subscribers, they will account for a substantial number of your page views. So if you make a promise of an ad-free experience, you will then have a challenge converting those readers to an ad with ad experience. So our promise to our readers is an ad-light experience. So a typical user who's not subscribed or signed in will probably see 5 or 6 ads on a page. A signed-in user might see 4 ads on a page. A subscriber will see probably 2 ads in a page. But the good thing is, for a subscriber, I have more data points, I have more information, I have more, because he's coming very frequently, I have more interest areas, I can target ads better. Which also means, one is less of clutter, and two, the ads are more relevant. So when a consumer sees relevant ads, he actually doesn't see it as a noise. But when you plaster a page with 15 ads and none of them are relevant, then he sees it as a noise and an annoyance. So I think that's the interplay between subscription and the ad business.
Yeah. Since you mentioned about data, that you can collect a lot of data, my question will come to, say, Puneet next, that from the last 2 years, everyone was actually trying to fight that big decision of Google to phase out cookies. And finally, those cookies are not dying. Cookies is going to stay. And there are a lot of cookies that were kept outside, and I was joking, अभी cookie खा सकते हैं, अभी cookie से हमको परहेज नहीं करना है. So how you are optimizing your programmatic strategies, and how you want to strike a balance between your direct and indirect? Because there is always a fight between the direct revenue and indirect revenue, because I can get a high CPM from the direct advertisers versus my CPM might be low, but there's a guarantee that I will be having a 100% fill rate. So how you are going about with these strategies?
See, the whole cookie deprecation has actually turned out to be one of the biggest teas in the ad tech industry and in general overall. And, there are very valid reasons why this was pulled back or postponed, as we would like to understand. 2 or 3 data points. In the survey that Google itself did with its advertisers, there was an expected 34% drop in revenues for them who were using Ad Manager, and about 21% for people who were using AdSense. And that came down to about 20% and 18% respectively in a privacy sandbox kind of a environment.
Correct.
Still a fairly significant hit. So that is one part of it. And then the second part of it is the fundamental change that it would have brought to the entire ad tech ecosystem, across the board, we have systems which are built on being able to get more information about the user through the cookies that are being collected. So that's a very fundamental change and a much longer term change. And third is obviously there are the lobbies and the regulations and all of those things. But while all this was happening over the last 2-3 years, 2 parallel developments have happened, and which I think is the biggest positive that has come out. One is a lot of publishers, like some of us here, globally, everyone started working and investing in building out first-party data. And that's something, all of us are at various stages of evolution. Sanjay's ecosystem would probably be 6 months ahead and such situation. But the core is everyone's sort of getting a lot more serious about being able to capture, understand their audience more, and build that first-party data. The second thing which has happened is there is a global slew of regulations and legislations for protecting user privacy. Started with GDPR in Europe, then in California. In India, now we have DPDPA. And all of this has actually created an ecosystem where increasingly advertisers and publishers are gravitating towards a privacy-first technology. That's the bias. And once you are able to create a consent-based ecosystem of first-party data, then it becomes a very powerful tool. To your point on programmatic, how is it changing programmatic? How is it likely to impact? I don't think anything will change in the short term. To move an ecosystem that massive needs a much bigger collective force of players, both on the advertiser side and the publisher side, pushing that out. I don't think anything will change in the short term. And it's a matter of time before there is a version of cookie deprecation comes up, maybe 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, who knows. But I think the people who have built out their first-party data will stand to take a lot of advantage from them. To your last point on direct versus indirect, see, look, direct is the advertising we get which are largely all brand advertising. And that's the holy grail, and that's the desperate holy grail for all the publishers, digital publishers, to get more and more brand dollars. So that will always be prioritized. I've not come across an ecosystem which would effectively do just a price eCPM-based optimization on an ongoing basis. And it's also about the advertiser relationships and the engagements and all of those that you have. So I think that will continue to be a priority. Indirect will evolve in the kind of mix that we are bringing in. Richer data will help us be able to offer better targeting, deeper targeting, and hopefully better CPMs.
Correct. So in fact, there's always a challenge. Like when direct advertising, even we work as a native provider, generally most of the publishers will say that first, we need higher revenues. Second is, we need brand safety. And when we talk about brand safety, this is one of the key component in all the conversations. And I coming to you, Samarth, like when you talk about video monetization, that's a new trend what we are looking at, okay? And generally how you are monetizing that, because I'm sure out of the 100% content that is available, Google will say 60% of the content can't be monetized because it's not brand safe. You're talking about Bangladesh, you are talking about Israel, you're talking about something. So what steps are you taking, and how you see that, how you can fully monetize this content, and can this be a bigger revenue stream going forward?
Yeah, so I think in terms of video monetization, I think it's a priority for everyone in this room, largely because of the higher CPMs that it drives either via direct or network or whichever way you look at it. The challenge, however, that comes when you're talking about video specifically is on the unit economic side of, when we are measuring, the cost of production of a video versus the ARPUs or the revenues that can, potentially generate. Then comes the factors around brand safety, for example, like you said. So, and this is related to, some of the contents, some of the content which generates a lot of views, possibly say war-related content or any of the topical content, any crime news or hard news content, so to speak. The percentage of monetization versus a non-hard news is significantly different, right? And you're looking at video monetization from the lens of various big tech and social media platforms, and each of them have evolved differently. So at our in our organization in Asianet and some of the others that we've seen is that we need to have a separate platform-based video monetization strategy. Like one of the gentlemen in one of the sessions earlier said that, in Instagram, for example, there's a lot of platform push on the videos, right? In terms of the views that you're getting. You might come across some short form content which has 1 million views, but the number of subscribers of that user could be in thousands or not even that. So that's how the platforms are varying. It's necessary to have a good short strategy, but the essence of that should be to convert, what we're aiming at is to converting them to consume our long form videos, which will lead to monetization. Earlier in one of the sessions, like Gaurav mentioned about the duration of monetization constantly coming down from 3 minutes to 1 minute and so on and so forth. It's also got, it's also got to do with, from the advertiser's point of view, what kind of watch times we are looking at for the relevance of the advertisement within the entire video segment that we're looking at. So at a platform level, there's a need that we believe to customize the video production. At the same time, there are tools on the several AI tools that are available. Some of them are being developed in-house by many of the organizations, and or to use all the elements that would constitute in a video. Given you will need content licensing, you'll need production, you'll need distribution.
So there's a cost, right?
Exactly.
So good content will not fetch you revenue. To how to balance that cost with the ad revenue? Because someone said that you create junky content, you get lot of monetization opportunities, but the good content, the serious content, possibly best in class, doesn't yield anything. So how do you balance those?
So I think the primary point to remember in all this is you're still catering to the same user who's viewing your shorts as well as your long form content, right? End of the day. There's significant overlap in that. So if you're able to attract a user via your short form content, your long form content essentially has to ensure that it is foolproof, brand safe, as much as you possibly can to enable the highest monetizations there. we are chasing both views and revenue metrics at the same time, right? So that conversion from shorts to a monetizable, a better monetizable, so to speak, long form content that's the thing we are constantly striving for.
Correct. So in fact, it is very difficult to strike the balance because sometimes normal content will give you a lot of revenue, but the best content might not be, or hero content might not be able to give so much of revenue. And I think it's a given fact that no one is actually able to, because for publications like big one wherein they have TV channels, a lot of video content is available, but 60 to 70% of the content is not being able to monetize. And since you also mentioned about AI, I will go to Dr. Loya and ask him that AI is a buzzword these days. We have seen that it has already started influencing the advertising strategies. Do you think it has a role to play in suggesting what kind of placements will work for you? How you can optimize your placements in order for better ROIs and better revenues? So your take on this, because you are from the tech side, and we'd love to hear your insights on this.
Thank you. The advertisement revenue model, simply put, is providing free content to audience, capture their attention and monetize that attention with advertisers. So the audience and advertisers, they have conflicting interest. And we as a publisher try to serve them one at a time. And to do that, we arrange it in layers. We arrange content, ad space, in a layer so that we are able to serve both the parties. But we do it one at a time, usually. I say usually because sometimes it is possible to serve the interest of both. And we are able to do that. That is a magic, or that is a dream all publishers wants to create. That means when there is a, let's say, an entertaining or very interesting news, and then there is a commercial break, audience doesn't like it, and there I'm showing soap advertisement or something. So there is a conflict. But if we have a content, let's say, about travel, and over there is some advertisement which is a discount for airline or discount for hotel or something like that, then there is that conflict is blurred a bit. And that requires creative process. And I think AI can be useful in identifying that possibilities and maximize that opportunity.
And most of the time when we are into running business, there is that one time when you say, this is where I can earn revenue, and this is one place wherein I can drive traffic. Which one you will choose and why?
We need to have a balance, because eventually the traffic is for the revenue.
Correct. Correct. So that's quite interesting. So coming to the challenges of the same challenge which I mentioned, that whether I should prefer revenue or we look at the user engagement or personalization. So there are a lot of challenges, and this question is open to all. Anyone can add it here in this, because in the interest of time, I have to speed up. We have to cover a lot of questions. So the biggest challenge is that in order to increase the mobile traffic, we are highly dependent on two things. One is AMP, other one is the Google Discover, or maybe you can say web stories. So how one can utilize this one? Because sometimes you say, we were having a discussion yesterday that, okay, I have 50 billion of traffic on an XYZ level, but how much of them is actually monetizable? And most of these places wherein you can't monetize them properly or 100%, or even revenue generation is low. So what strategies are you adopting to, reduce your dependencies on this and try to improve your direct traffic? So anyone will like to answer, maybe Puneet, Sanjay, Samarth, Dr. Loya.
So I think when you embark on building a subscription business, and I mentioned engagement earlier, so direct traffic is one of the measures of how many loyal people you have, because that's what you want to build. And again, it's a chicken and egg situation, because the more subscribers you have, the more they'll tend to come directly to you. So you're also creating a lock-in, right? And that is why if you look at a Swiggy or Zomato, they try to subscribe you and entice you with a 30 rupee subscription. Because what they're trying to do is, it's not the cost of the subscription where they're going to make money. But the moment you spend that 30 rupees, the next time you place an order, you say, oh, I have a subscription on Zomato, let me order there. So they're creating a lock-in or a loyalty for you. So similarly, when you get a user to subscribe for your content, you're also creating a loyalty which will increase consumption. And people who are not subscribers, if you can get them to know your brand and come to you directly. Now, the way we measure direct is twofold. If somebody is typing Indian Express in the search bar and coming to us, I am counting it as direct because he has a very clear intent of coming to my brand.
Correct.
Or he's coming directly by whatever channel. Newsletters again is direct for me. Notifications is direct for me. So any user journey that starts with a factor that I control is direct. Anything that is beyond my control, right? Like search, like discover, like social. Facebook decides they don't want to showcase news, and once fine day they switch off, and suddenly you lose 20% of your traffic. So that is the risk-reward trade-off. So that 20% was great as long as it was coming, but you had no control over it. What did you do when you were getting the 20% to convert some of them into your direct traffic? Were you able to get them to subscribe to your newsletters, to download your app, right? To maybe bookmark your page? If you are using those as channels of acquisition from where you build loyalty, great. But if you're using them just for frivolous number game, I don't think you're going to end up well in this business because it's very competitive and very tough.
As you mentioned about Zomato and Swiggy, I wanted to ask this question to you earlier also. How about an idea wherein you start selling subscription on Zomato and Swiggy?
See, it's not a bad idea. Again, the point is it a relevant audience? Is my content relevant to them? So from a sampling perspective, it's a great idea. So maybe a lot of young people are out there, they're not aware of Indian Express, they're not exposed to my content. So can I bundle and sell with a Swiggy or a Zomato to acquire new people and enable sampling of my content? I'll see a small conversion, but as long as the cost metrics work out and I have conversion metrics, so I think with subscriptions, you have to be open to all ideas and all concepts. You have to evaluate it. The biggest thing, as I said, is there's a top of the funnel from where you acquire people, and then there's a journey of engaging them and converting them. And then a journey of engaging them again and retaining them. So you have to do all steps and you have to do continuously. Because it's not about having 2 lakh subscribers and then the end of story. Today our aspiration is 1 million. The moment I'm sure I hit a 8 lakh, 9 lakh number, the aspiration will increase to a 2 million. So it's an ongoing journey. It's never going to end. And in a market where you have 1.4 billion people, those aspirations will keep growing. And as the middle class grows, it will also be viable.
Hey, Puneet, you have some other views?
No, I sort of agree with what Sanjay is talking about. But, a couple of things. You were talking of AMP, web stories and all that. Those are, occupational hazards for all of us because lateral traffic makes up for 50-60% of the traffic. Any average publisher sometimes has as high as 70%. And that's because that's how the whole ecosystem has evolved. So I think the key thing is really be able to, one, look at getting to know your user better and then hopefully transposing them to come to you directly. To the engagement models that you are able to evolve from a perspective of whether it's a newsletter or actually activations, on-ground activations and IPs and all of that. That becomes a connect. And the third thing being, there is a limit to the kind of optimization you can do, let's say, on an AMP page or a web stories. And that's because it has to be a certain size and hence the ad spot needs to be limited and all that. But I think we've tried a few experiments, not so much from an advertising perspective, but from a perspective of being able to recirculate that traffic.
Distribution.
Yeah, and that's worked well for us in both the cases. In the ad spot thing is not an ecosystem that we control, and so that's what you got to live with. To your other point on Swiggy and Zomato, there are actually players who are selling subscriptions on Amazon already. So yeah, you will get there. And why not? I mean, it's just another product which you sort of activate.
Maybe I had an idea. Maybe like how about distribution some of the food related content on these platforms, which is like 100% contextual, and it can give you some of the returning audiences, and this can be another section. Maybe Dr. Loya, you want to say something about it, or?
I think this context-based things are always good for audience as well as for advertiser. Also, that would be useful when data privacy and this cookieless world, if it comes, if and when it comes, context would be one of the best things, and that would be our best tool. So I agree with you.
What about you, Samarth?
So when it is, if you're talking about, the relevance of non-news platforms having content, if you view it from their angle, it helps them increase the time on their apps, simple as that. When you're looking at, take any real money gaming app or a fantasy sports app, the only time you're actually activating is when a match is on, right? And some of them you find them supplementing with their own editorial organizations as well, right? You look at Paytm, there is a news section on Paytm. And so it works on both sides. I think the larger point which all of us are also to chase is how much do we understand about our audience. That is where we are also dependent on some of media tech companies such as yourselves to be providing us with enough feedback on customization, recirculation of audiences like that. So the more we understand about it, the more we are able to personalize. Coming to the web stories and discover part. And see, while in terms of absolute network revenues, you may not find tangible revenue sources, but it definitely fuels into your direct revenues when your audiences and market shares go up. So it may not be tangibly identifiable if it is not network revenue, but with your improved market shares, your direct revenues go up. So that's another benefit that.
Correct. So in fact, it's quite interesting, and we need to look beyond this options of increasing the traffic, because there was a time when direct traffic used to be like 40%, 50%. People used to actually type Times of India, Economic Times, or News 18, or Z Business, or Asianet. Now people search a news and they directly come up. And AMP project has been dead in many countries, but in India it will not go off because there's a high dependency, and Google is really trying to get away from AMP in many other countries, and it will be quite interesting. So looking at this, like we are so much into the regular way of doing business. Like earlier, any article which does 25, 30,000 was huge. Like, there's a page views are coming in, we have a lot of inventory. But these days we see only 3,000 or 4,000, even getting 5,000. If you get on any article, you feel, wow, that's the best article which has come up. And it will start featuring in the RSS feed. And so wanted to understand, how about the new age mediums which are coming in, or the options which are especially coming to talking about the podcast as a section. I know that Money Control has a podcast, Sanjay has a podcast on 3 things, there's Z, there is other. The podcast is a new thing. Audio content is also, I understand that audio is more of a reminder medium because we have sold radio, but is there an opportunity you see in this kind of platform? So maybe you want to add, Dr. Loya, Sanjay, Puneet, anyone?
So I think we've had a podcast for a pretty long time called 3 Things, which has been in the top 3 on a lot of platforms. But we saw basically the monetization is right now missing. And even the uptake is not very high, especially for a news kind of a podcast. So I think it's still kind of early days. It'll take a little time before it can become significant. But what we have recently seen is YouTube has started pushing podcasts aggressively. And we have seen a big jump in the numbers on 3 Things because of YouTube now kind of getting active into that space. So YouTube already had the audiences there, but their focus was not there. They tried audio for the last 3 years, but there was very little traction. But now with YouTube picking up podcasts, I think the volume and the scale should happen. And I think when volume, scale, and engagement starts happening, monetization will follow. So I think another 2 to 3 years, podcasts should start contributing in decent sums.
So that's
It's
a
a good
great
time to get in. And one more point I'd like to add is, unlike video, audio is relatively a much low-cost production kind of a thing. And a lot of us, especially people coming from the print background, when we produce videos, we produce talking heads, which is no different from a podcast technically. So, but we incur that cost of editing and producing and camera and studio for what is largely an audio content in a, with a person talking. So this thing could also happen, in an audio format, in a physical format or a video format. But the moment you do it in an audio format, we could all be sitting remotely and, doing it with our photos out there. The cost structure changes drastically. So the ROI will come because if audio picks up, my cost of production goes down, and if it has maybe even lesser CPMs than video, it will still probably have a faster path to break even than video.
Correct. So maybe Puneet, CTV, do you also see CTV as an opportunity? With the same question, like, can that be another channel of distribution? Because you have television also, and CTV is kind of, digital. We say we are not eating up the television side of, revenue, but it is directly coming from the digital set. So is that an opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, just some quick statistics, and I was just reading up. And since being a television player, it's a part of the terrain that we track very closely. Between May 22 and May 24, there is 150%, almost 150% growth in watch time on YouTube on CTV. And almost a 250% increase in the videos that are uploaded with a CTV perspective. Some of you would know YouTube's now working on a CTV only app, and that big. And why I am talking YouTube, because that being a video first platform becomes a leading indicator of a lot of things on how the consumption is evolving. So that's one. Second, Samsung has built a fairly significant ecosystem of its own. LG is doing it, Apple has been doing it. Now in India, they are getting very actively involved. Android is working on, Google's working on an Android standardized ecosystem for CTV. So I think, and on the other side, the equipment and the connectivity has been, has become a lot more easily affordable. So from a perspective, as a television player, I see that as an extremely exciting development, because in addition to getting to a newer set of audience who are typically cord cutters because they don't have a DTH or a cable connection and all that, and being able to get to an audience where I know a lot more about them.
Correct.
Not some heuristic data, but a lot more in terms of what they watch, what are their interests, what else do they watch, and all of that. And then the ability to be able to do targeted advertising accordingly. So, absolutely, I think this is a space which I would not say is waiting to explode. I think it's a fairly serious space as it's evolving. We have done, and I'm sure Idris's team would have done some initial advertising, distribution, and activation stuff already. And then you get to the OTTs of the world, Geo Cinemas and Hotstar and all of that, which are also now starting to get a lot more active in the news space. So I think all of this combined will become a fairly significant play for us. And it will basically be divided into two tracks. One is the track which is where you distribute content through the aggregators. Correct. Like a YouTube OTT, and second would be having your own app for each of the Play Store or each of the ecosystems that you want to be present in.
Correct. Since you mentioned about distribution, I will go to Dr. Loya. We have seen that whatever traffic you get in India, you might have 70-80% of traffic in India, which only contributes about 30% or 40% of the overall revenue. But wherein is the traffic which is coming from the overseas, US, UK, Canada, those kind of markets, wherein Indian diaspora So, India has already surpassed China in terms of, population. If we have a census, we will be the world largest. And we say Mumbai is one Australia, we will have many other countries, into different states. So what are the strategies you are, employing at your end in order to get more international traffic and, improve the business? Because that's where the money is, and that can be a missed opportunity.
We contribute to more than 25% of the world population. We are there everywhere. So that gives us audience at every location. And as we know that for indirect revenue, the rate what we get from overseas is much higher than the domestic rate. So that is a plus side of it. But there is a negative side. For domestic market, I have direct revenue as well as indirect revenue. And if I compare only indirect to indirect, yes, global market gives me better rate. But if I see direct revenue from domestic and indirect revenue from overseas, then the comparison gives a different result. And since in domestic market, I'm able to get both kinds of revenue. What we need to crack is how do we get direct revenue for overseas audience? If we are able to do that, I think that would be great. But we don't have any answer as of now.
So just a quick point on that, and this is basis some of the stuff that we've done at Network 18. I think fundamentally it's about content and what kind of content are you serving and what kind of interest that it generates. And there are two sets of audience. There's the diaspora and there is the mainstream audience. So, we've seen, we launched Vantage about a year and a half ago on First Post, and it gets 70% of its audience from outside the country, and which includes diaspora and international subscribers or viewers. Fundamentally, because it is at that intersection of global affairs and India's view on global affairs. So I think those are the kind of things that will generate and get that traction. Otherwise, there is the diaspora who's interested in what's going on back home, and that will continue. But that's growing only at a certain pace. That's not something which is growing at the rate of population growth in India.
Thank you. So it's a wrap. I don't have time for the closing remarks because I can see the team is saying that, the lunch is waiting for us. But it was a fantastic discussion. We'll discuss about some of the challenges and some of the opportunity. I think subscription or podcasts and even video is a big challenge. We couldn't cover short form video, but there's another session happening on the short form video. So I'm sure, you will want to wait for that session to happen. Thank you so much for joining us today. And next time we need an larger time slot and no cutting allowed, okay? Even though if the lunch is between. Thank you, everyone.